This episode is proudly supported by ArtsPay. As a hospitality owner, you know that when it comes to business, the right tools are everything, especially when it comes to payments. ArtsPay, based in Australia, is a payment solution built on a unique model. They give 50% of their profits back to the arts community. They provide world-class point-of-sale payments and support that make your operations run smoothly. But with every transaction, a portion of the fees helps build a permanent funding source for Australia's artists and cultural institutions. What's best is it costs less too. The result is a powerful way for your business to grow and become a force for good. You're not just taking payments, you're directly supporting the vibrant culture that makes our communities unique. ArtsPay believes that business should add up for everyone. For more information, go to artspay.com. ArtsPay, it pays to make the change.
What I love is bringing new people into the Indigenous ingredient scene and seeing them understand more and tell the stories of what I told them at dinner to their friends. So it becomes a bit more of a meaningful understanding of Indigenous ingredients that, people wouldn't know.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. For many chefs, cooking is a craft, a passion, or even a business. But for today's guest, it became a way to heal and reconnect with his roots. After a personal tragedy, he turned his Indigenous heritage and native ingredients of the top end to create something truly special. Zach Green is a chef and known as the Storyteller Chef. Zach, how are you?
Good, thank you, brother. And yourself?
I'm good. It's good to get you on the show. You're up in Darwin at the moment. It's pretty warm up there, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's starting to get up to becoming build-up season just before the wet, so very humid. But yeah, I've been able to get out and about at the moment, getting some mud crabs and green ants and going fishing for barra as well. So it's been good.
Wow, there's just so much amazing produce and up there. Tell us a bit about where you are and sort of what you have access to at the moment.
So I'm in Darwin, so I've been here for the last couple of months with the family, my wife and 4 kids. And, we've been able to go out and about, just chasing some mud crabs, etc., and green ants. A lot of people ask me why green ants. I'm like, it's probably one of the best eating insects that you'll ever have. It's got that sour lolly feel and barramundi. But the produce up here is amazing. I don't think Darwin gets. It should be on the forefront of everyone if they're wanting to travel for food, because there's just so much stuff up here, especially the markets as well during the dry season. But I'm usually out and about chasing mud crabs and barra. But coming into wet season is when the magpie goose come into Darwin. So I'm looking forward to that. I haven't had magpie goose or gudamachi, which is in Yolngu language, and some wild boars and some buffalo that'll come during the wet season.
What's the food scene like up in Darwin? I mean, it's so different across the whole country depending where you are, but what do you love about the sort of restaurant and hospitality sort of scene up there?
Well, there's a lot of family-run places up here in Darwin, and I think that's why I love the food scene up here. It's not going to like the waterfront and going to like, those amazing restaurants down there, but I think for Darwin, you can find those like little restaurants that are family orientated and that have those family recipes. So, for example, one of my best spots that I love is 2 of my best spots is Spice Garden in Nightcliff, which is owned and operated by a family, and that's all fusion with Indian Sri Lankan food. And then there's a little place called the Rapid Creek Cafe, and it's run by a Japanese chef, and they've got some of the best Japanese curry that I've had for a very, very long time. So I think, if you look past like those big restaurants that are at the waterfront and go into, the back streets of Nightcliff or Rapid Creek, you'll find some amazing family-orientated run places, and that's what I love about Darwin. It's very, obviously it's got that Asian vibe, very multicultural, and but yeah, like I think if you look past those big restaurants, you'll find some unique spots, and that's what I love about Darwin. The produce is fresh, especially on a Sunday, going down to Parat markets and getting your fresh produce for the week. You can't do it anywhere else in the world, I believe.
I know you've had quite an extensive career as a chef, which we'll get into shortly, but you're sort of known as the Storyteller Chef at the moment. Tell us a bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm traveling Australia doing a lot of Indigenous dining experiences. Myself being a Gunjamara man and also a Palawa man from Southwest Victoria and Tasmania. I think for me it's about telling the stories of the food. Wherever I go, there's always different stories, whether you're cooking kangaroo on Gadigal country, which is in Sydney, or you're cooking kangaroo in Noongar country, which is Yonga. So for me, it's like telling the stories of the land through food. I call it reconciliation on a plate because for so long you could walk into an Italian restaurant, an Asian restaurant, a Greek restaurant, and those recipes have been handed down from generation to generation. But a lot of people don't realise, the stories that are attached to the food that you eat, whether it's Indigenous ingredients, whether it's kangaroo, crocodile, or quandong or finger lime. Those stories are there. Those stories are attached to generational of cultural stories. So, yeah, for me, as calling myself the Storyteller Chef, it's about bringing those stories and cultural elements out into the food, so people get a different understanding, but a meaningful dining experience, knowing they've gone away knowing that they've just eaten, 60,000 years worth of stories within the plate.
Tell us a bit about your travels. Like, how different is the food that you're cooking depending where you are, and sort of tapping into the local ingredients as well? Because Australia is so large and the ingredients are so diverse. Does it change as you travel?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people don't. And it's something that caught my attention when the late Anthony Bourdain spoke about it, how people in the food industry are starting to get lazy. He said it when he was alive around how, tomatoes in Italy, that were only ripe at one point of the year, and that's when we should be eating them. And that's similar to Indigenous ingredients. Our ingredients are very seasonal. So, for example, bush tomatoes only grow, in Central Australia or the Pilbara when there's a big fire that has come through and then rain after that. So every Indigenous mob across Australia have certain seasons, and those seasons are able to tell us when, say, quandong is allowed to be foraged, or say crocodile is allowed to be hunted, or barramundi's coming into season. So yeah, wherever I go in Australia, there's always different seasons, and it's about following that, but then also getting the understanding and respect from traditional owners and elders when you go on their land, knowing what to be able to forage, but have permission to be able to forage that as well.
What's the journey been like for you as you're traveling and cooking? Are you sort of learning new techniques as well on your journey?
Yeah, I'm learning each and every day. Like, being a Gunjamara man from Southwest Victoria and a Palawa man from Tasmania, I'm learning so much about our different mobs across Australia as well. Because a lot of people would think that all Aboriginal people, are all one. We all come from the same culture, but, we might come from one culture, but it's many cultures within that one culture. So for me, whenever I'm traveling, say from example to Darwin to say Kununurra, I'm learning, about the traditional hunting techniques mob in Kununurra use, or traditional cooking techniques as well. So, throughout my travels across Australia, there is so much, different cooking techniques I've used, because of the area that I'm in. And it's really, really special for me because I'm learning about traditional techniques and but putting that into a modern technique as well. So, mob can also move forward with the times as well.
Yeah. I want to sort of explore this journey that you're on in detail, but take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up, and was food sort of central to your family when you were growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up obviously in Victoria. Yeah, food was always an element within our family, especially on my mum's side. So my grandmother would always do massive cook-ups, whether it was Easter or Christmas, and I think that was the first kind of breakthrough I had of appreciation with food because food brought our family together. And then on my dad's side as well, obviously my dad's side being the Aboriginal link to my family, I learned so much of how food can kind of control, systems within our family as well. So food has always been a big part of me. I think I remember back to those days where, both my grandmothers taught me so much about food, especially, my mum's mum taught me how to, cook a roast for the first time or being able to, put all these amazing platters together and, your family smiling while they're eating as well. So, yeah, food's always been a major part in my family, especially on my mum's side, because I think, that's why our family got brought together on those big occasions was through food.
But when did you first sort of consider chefing as a career?
I went to two different high schools, Huck. Or three, actually, three different high schools. So the first two high schools, I just wasn't fitting in. I got bullied a lot to a point where I just wasn't really, fitting into anywhere in life. And then I went to my third school and just by chance, I started to dabble in, cooking for the family, etc. And then on the TV, it was Curtis Stone's first show, Surfing the Menu. And I said dead straight to my mum, I was like, Curtis, like he's surfing because obviously I surf as well. He's surfing and he's cooking on the beach. I want to do that, and that was when the likes of Jamie Oliver and Gordon Ramsay was around as well. But I think what I found with cooking, it wasn't just because of the Curtis Stones or Jamie Oliver or Gordon Ramsay, but when I found myself in an apprenticeship at a little place called Willow Lake, which is just outside Mansfield, Victoria, it made sense. So when I was in the kitchen, it just made sense. And not realizing until later in life, being diagnosed with autism and ADHD and all that jazz that you're starting to find out later in life. I've realized that the kitchen has always made sense for me, but it's always been a safe place where I found that I could truly be myself, and no one was there to judge. So I think, put me in the real world, as I say to people, like my mind's going 100 miles an hour, but you put me in the kitchen, everything slows down, everything makes sense. And I've only really started to adapt the kitchen of how I perceive myself into the kitchen, into my real life and my reality. So yeah, when I was a youngster, the likes of Curtis Stone really played a big part, but then also, stepping into the kitchen it made sense, but then also gave me a reality of being safe in the kitchen, and I just felt like I could be myself.
Tell us about those early years in commercial kitchens. Were there sort of any really important venues or people that helped you on your career path that you can share with us?
Yeah, so before I started my apprenticeship, my mum's always been in hospitality, so it was kind of I was always dish pigging along the way up at Mount Buller and in those big resorts and those big hotels. So that kind of played a pivotal role in me as a chef as well, especially being a dish pig or a kitchen hand, and I know we don't say dish pig anymore, but the kitchen hand and stuff like that, I think I was able to see a different elements of each resort that I went to, like, because obviously it was a lot of bulk cooking, etc. But then, my first job as an apprentice chef at Willow Lake gave me a different element again, where that was more casual fine dining, and it was just being the head chef as well. So. May I say, a baptism of fire. Like, we were doing, me and the head chef Travis, we were doing 120, 120 a head or 120 people packs every night, and I was like, this is not like cooking on a TV show. Like, this is real. This is real stuff. So, yeah, I guess like the pivotal venues would be, the Mount Bullers and Pinnacle Valley Resort, which was just around the corner from my house, and Willow Lake as well. Those kind of the venues really paved the part where, you had one side was bulk cooking, but you had to be organised, had to have, that amount of food for that amount of people coming through, especially in the ski season, and then delicately plating food up at Willow Lake. So, yeah, for me, I think, those two areas, those two venues, or those venues that I worked across really played a pivotal part in, who I was as a chef.
Tell us about when you started to explore Indigenous cuisine and your heritage.
Yeah, so that was off the back. So obviously, I always knew, with my grandmother and grandfather being, both Aboriginal people, like, kangaroo was like, part of the everyday family stuff, and eating eel, etc. But it wasn't until I kind of had a really tragic personal circumstances in my life when I was around 25. So, it's only 11 years back, and is when I lost 3 children in the space of 18 months with my former partner, and my former partner being Yungwal, which is in northeast Arnhem Land, Northern Territory. I started going up to Darwin, and me as a chef, I'm always thinking, or me as like just a person always thinking of new ideas. I started asking myself, like, where's all the bush food? Where's all, in Darwin, there's no places you can get like kangaroo or emu or crocodile or bush tomato. And I knew of all the spices, but and all the indigenous ingredients and protein, but I think Darwin really played that pivotal part where that's where I wanted to put it on a plate for everyone else to eat. And that's why I opened up Elijah's Kitchen. So it wasn't until I lost my 3 children where I started to put Indigenous ingredients, Indigenous and protein into my menus. And it's also that kind of sticking point where, are people going to eat this? Like, are people, is there racism going to come towards me, etc.? Because, with my family, it was just an everyday thing. And then with my former partner's family, like, we were hunting turtle, hunting dugong. So it was kind of part of the, part of family. But I didn't know how people would really, really wanting to try crocodile or try kangaroo and pay for it. But yeah, it worked out to a point where, we were booked out for a good 6 to 12 months. So, yeah.
Take us back to that period of time. What was it like for you trying to translate those ingredients and striking that balance of honouring the heritage and the way and the techniques, but also trying to have an audience and people appreciate your cooking? Was it a challenge getting dishes right?
Yeah, it was. So I think 6 months before the restaurant, like, it was only a pop-up restaurant. So 6 months before the pop-up restaurant opened, I wasn't in the kitchen. I wasn't really working. So I was trialing stuff in my home kitchen. So, for example, I'd go to my cousin, "Oh, can you get me some crocodile, or can you get me some kangaroo, and let me try all this?" Because I didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't know, I didn't have a lot of money to be able to go to, gourmet butchers and stuff. So I was just doing it off, people hunting stuff for me, and then just trialing it. I'd say, for example, my signature dish at in Elijah's Kitchen in Darwin was crocodile laksa. So if you think about laksa, laksa's like Darwin is the laksa capital of Australia, and I'm happy to have a debate on that. If anyone doesn't think that, um, but I'm like, oh, what's the Northern Territory laksa? And I'm like, then it just got me thinking. I was like, why don't I just put crocodile in it? And I trialed it each and every, for 2 weeks until I got it perfect. So, yeah, a lot of my trial food that I was doing, and I wasn't selling it out of my home kitchen, but yeah, I'd have family and friends over that didn't know about Indigenous ingredients, hadn't really had it, and I was asking them, like, do you reckon this would sell in Darwin? And yeah, then all of a sudden, yeah, it just went gangbusters. And yeah, so I think that period 6 months before we opened, I was trialing everything at home. So yeah.
Tell us about some of your favourite Indigenous ingredients and some that maybe some chefs haven't cooked, and the best way to cook them.
So at the moment, I'm loving quandongs at the moment. So I get quandongs from Alice Springs from the Little family down there, and I'm loving quandongs at the moment. A lot of people would put them in their desserts, which is fair enough, and obviously make jams. But at the moment, I'm actually making quandong chips and doing it with guacamole as well. So and finger lime guacamole. So I'm actually loving quandongs at the moment. I think you can do so much with quandongs, and it just doesn't have to be desserts or or jams or sweet and sour quandong glaze or whatever. Like, it can be other stuff. So yeah, I've done a lot of quandong chips lately, and one of my kids is vegetarian, so he's always coming to me saying, "Can we have that vegetarian meat?" which is quandong. So I've got him on some good stuff, and yeah, so quandong, I love quandong at the moment. Here in Darwin at our house, I'm growing finger lime, I'm growing bush apples, etc. So yeah, for me, I think it's all the native fruit I love. So bush apple, for example, I think a lot of people underestimate it. But yeah, finger lime, for example, I think finger lime's really popular at the moment, especially in seafood and salads. But probably the one thing that probably the Indigenous ingredient that I love the most is bush tomato. Obviously, it only grows, once a year, twice a year if we're lucky. But yeah, with bush tomato, I think it's very underrated. You can make with bush tomato, like I do a bush tomato smoky spice, which obviously can go on, meat rubs, etc. But yeah, like bush tomato, I think is one of my favourites at the moment, as well as quandong. But yeah, bush tomato is so underrated when it comes to Indigenous spices, because everyone thinks about the salt bush and lemon myrtle, etc. But yeah, no one really thinks about bush tomato.
Kangaroo features quite heavily across menus all across the country now, and that wasn't all the case. But something like crocodile or emu, not as much. Do you have any sort of tips on cooking those and getting them right?
Yeah, so a lot of chefs have asked me this wherever I've gone to, do a chef residency or something like that. A lot of people go, "Oh, I've tried emu, but it becomes tough," and I'm like, with native game or with Indigenous game or native game, whatever you want to call it, it's either like 30-second to a minute and a half sear, that's it, so it melts in your mouth, or it's slow cooked. Because a lot of people think when they're cooking emu steaks, they're cooking like a steak, like a porterhouse or a Scotch fillet. But yeah, with emu or kangaroo, it's that slight sear, so it melts in your mouth. It's even like a like I say, a blue steak really, because it's still cooked, but it's still you're still getting that flavour. And then with crocodile, I think a lot of people make that mistake of overcooking it as well, and that's with a lot of Indigenous game too, brother. Like if you overcook it, like I guarantee you, people won't come back. And this is something that I always say to people, like you go to an Italian restaurant and you've had a really bad pasta, you're not going to sway away from Italian cuisine. You're going to go to another Italian restaurant. But if you have crocodile, kangaroo, or emu and you don't like it, there's no other places that you can go try it again. And I've had a lot of people say that to me, like they said, "Oh, you've swayed my opinion on emu because when I went to a restaurant, it was shite, but now I've had it through you. I actually really like it." So yeah.
Tell us a little bit about creating this storyteller sort of traveling, cooking and celebration of Indigenous ingredients that you're doing. How did you come up with the idea and what's it been like sort of piecing it together?
Yeah, so after Elijah's, I had a 5-year break. So I was mentally spent after Elijah's. So I think if anyone who listens is running a restaurant, like you're kind of that front of house person, accountant, if you're doing it all on your own, and head chef, and you've got all these personalities within, your pop-up restaurant. So I was mentally spent, and also I was getting a lot of racial taunts online when it came to Elijah's, and also 2018, it was only really 2 to 3 years after I lost my children, so I was under a lot of like kind of trauma toll as well. And then in the space of after losing my children, I lost my nephew, my grandfather, and my dad. So I was mentally spent, brother. So I needed to take that break, and I took a 5-year hiatus. Like I was, for example, 2018, like I think I said it on one of my Instagram posts, like I was on top of the game, like, Bachelorette, Eat Australia with Andy Allen, Ida Butt Rose, but my mental health was probably more paramount to be looked after. And to be quite honest, COVID was a blessing in disguise, and for me to recharge my batteries. And then I met my wife, Bobby Locke, who's a incredibly, acclaimed Indigenous artist herself. And I think, and also her sons now are my sons, and I think that's when I started cooking for them. And Lawrence, who's 10, has got level 3 autism, and he would just tell me straight if it was not a very good dish or it tasted weird, and it got the fire in my belly again. And then I was speaking with Bobby one day, and I said, I want to get back into this. I've got unfinished business, and I said I need to come up with a name. And she's and Bobby's like, well, you like to tell stories like within your food, so why don't you call yourself the Storyteller Chef? And that's how it came about.
Once you had this sort of idea and concept, what was it like trying to sort of roll it out and get back in the kitchen and back in the game in a sense?
Yeah, so I think I was kind of lucky in the end, because I was living in Port Hedland at the time, 2023. So it was only a couple of years back. But, I took this walk across the Port Hedland foreshore, and if people know Port Hedland, it's all really only around mining. But yeah, this park called Marapikarinyu Park, which is the traditional name for Port Hedland, had these 2 shipping containers just sitting there. They were all white, and so I asked the question to someone like, what are these? And they said, they've got 2 commercial kitchens in them. I was like, what? I was like, 2 commercial kitchens? And they're like, yeah, they've been sitting there for 2 years. No one's really taken them up. I'm like, huh. And then I went back to Bobby and I said, I think I'm gonna trial this. And yeah, that was in April 2023. And then by August, Luca's Kitchen opened. And then all of a sudden, I did a 6-week trial of a Luca's kitchen, and had 600 people within 10 nights of service. So, and after that, I was like, maybe I've still got this. Maybe I can still cook. And then, yeah, all of a sudden, brother, like, yeah, after the 6 weeks, yeah, I started to get back on social media, and then I don't know if you know Sharon Windsor from Indigi Earth, and yeah, Auntie Sharon Windsor reached out to me and she's like, I'm so glad you're back in the industry. So yeah, and then all of a sudden, yeah, last year was a few pop-ups around, WA. This year's been a bit more. I think I've had about 20 events throughout the year and still got a few left. And yeah, and then next year's even more, even more jam-packed. But yeah, I didn't think I was ready, but I, spoke to Bobby about it, and yeah, Bobby really helped me believe I was ready again. And then, yeah, all of a sudden, yeah, I'm back in the game and starting to do a lot more media, etc. But I think now my learnings from what I did at Elijah's to compared to now at Storyteller Chef is just pick and choose. Not go 100% all the time. And I think that was one of my big problems at Elijah's, which was, I was traveling every second week to Sydney or Brisbane or, Melbourne and doing pop-ups, and it just really mentally spent me. But yeah, this time around, obviously I've got a different focus in life. I've got Bobby's kids that are now my sons, and they call me dad. So I kind of pick and choose, if I feel like I'm mentally going, or mentally, not at that capacity, I'll say no to something now. Yeah, so yeah, now I'm on the road and I absolutely love it. I think I'm a bit more wiser and mature now. I don't drink anymore. I don't smoke anymore. So yeah, 2018, I had a big beard back then, so I think I'm a totally different bloke and totally different person. So.
What's this journey been like the sort of last couple of years for you? Has it changed you and your cooking and sort of what you want to get out of your career, this sort of storyteller chef journey that you're going on?
Yeah, I think so. So I was hell-bent, back in 2018 to get those chef hats, to get a restaurant of the year. Like, I was so hell-bent on individual accolades and being that man. But now, fast forward, I think I'm more about talking about the vision, but my culture at the forefront now. So I think I'm totally different in that aspect where I just want my culture at the forefront. Even though my culture was at the forefront back in 2018, but I think I was more hungry to get those accolades, chef's hat. And I think every chef would love a chef's hat, but, I was hungry for it. And I think now I'm more about traveling and educating people where, wherever they eat my food, dining experiences, cooking workshops. I think I've found that balance now, which I love.
For young chefs out there looking to get a better understanding of Indigenous ingredients, what sort of advice would you have for them?
Go to your traditional owner groups. Yeah, I've had a lot of young non-Indigenous chefs asking the question, like, where can I get Indigenous ingredients from? And my philosophy is always going to Indigenous suppliers or Indigenous producers that are on country each and every day. So, yeah, my advice for non-Indigenous Indigenous chefs is not trying to overdo it. I think, I see a lot of non-Indigenous chefs that have, restaurants and want to put Indigenous ingredients all through their menu. I think it's like starting at one or two just to be subtle, to introduce it to your menu. So, but then also getting it from Indigenous food suppliers and producers, so it's going straight back to that community.
Well, it's amazing the journey that you're on. What do you love about what you do?
I just get to travel. I get to travel, to different countries across Australia and meeting different people and talking about food. But I'm not your typical chef where you'll find me in the kitchen 24/7 a day or, every day of the week. Like, I'm not that kind of chef. Like, it's funny. Like, I just like to be in the kitchen. When I feel like I've an idea of a recipe's come up, I'm like, oh, I need to go in the kitchen and do this. But the thing about what I love is bringing new people into the Indigenous ingredient scene, and seeing them understand more and tell the stories of what I told them at dinner to their friends. So it's almost like that domino effect. If I'm telling you a story that I'm allowed to tell, and then you're going to one or two people or one or two of your friends and saying, hey, I just learnt this, and then those people tell those people and those tells those people, it becomes a bit more of a meaningful understanding of Indigenous ingredients that, people wouldn't know. So I love that aspect, and being able to create stuff that I'm doing at the moment. I've just created a cultural experience in Karratha called Bar Up Experience, where it was a long table dinner this year. Now it's turning into a long table dinner and a concert on alternative nights, and and after the third year of that, I hand it back to traditional owners and say, this is your event now. So just loving that kind of stuff and doing a bit of legacy work as well.
Well, Zach, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear a part of your journey. Can't wait to see what's going to happen next. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.